In the inside of the Acorn house, we're going to have a box that can hold a mini album. And I'm going to make this out of double-walled construction. And so I have a cut from medium weight chipboard. I have 4 pieces 5 by 7, 4 pieces 2 by 7, and 1 piece that is 2 by 4 3/4. And those have all been glued into sets of 2 with the exception of this is the base over here, the 2 by 4 3/4. The rest have been glued into double wall construction. I just like to make my boxes that way. Probably in this case it may not be totally necessary, but I just prefer it that way. So I'm going to construct the box by putting the 2 shorter sides on the inside of the 2 longer sides, and then the base piece will fit right down on the inside. So I'm going to glue that up and then we'll be back. The box is all set up now, and since I'm going to have my lighted windows, I want to have something that you can see when you look in the windows. So I'm using 2 of the postcards from the Woodland Fantasy paper. There's 4 postcards to choose from on that sheet, and I've just cut them down to be 5 inches wide by 4 inches tall, and I've drawn a line 1.5 inches up from the bottom, and I'm just going to use some score tape and then some an additional adhesive. I'm just going to use my ATG in the center to put those pictures on either side of the box. Now I have a picture on either side of the box, and the box is completed. I'm going to make 2 little platforms for some tea lights to sit on inside of the Acorn house. Now I've decided that I want to have lights illuminating these windows that we cut in here. So if you don't want to have lights on the inside, you do not need to build these little light stands. So the way I'm going to build them is that I've cut 4 pieces that are 1 1/4 inch by 4.5 inches, and we need to do a little sub-cutting on that. You can see I've got the rest of these cut into trapezoids, and the way I did that was I marked 2 inches in the center of one side, and I can just use my craft mat to do that, and line it up so that it is centered on one of your lines here. And then just make a couple little tick marks at the 2-inch mark, and then we'll just connect those marks with each of these corners to create that trapezoid shape. I've got a couple cut here, so I'll just move on with them. So then the sides of the little light stands are 1 1/2 inch tall, so I've just cut a strip of 1 1/2 inches of medium weight chipboard, and for each of the little light stands you'll need approximately 9.5 inches by 1 1/2 inches of the medium weight chipboard. So the first piece is cut at 4 1/8 inches length, then we need 2 that are at 1 5/8, and then 1 at 1 7/8, and we'll put them together in this order. So let me do that. Give these a burnish. And trim a couple of these are a little long. There we go. And these should be the approximate length needed to fit on top of one of these little platforms. And the easiest way I find to do this is to stand this on its edge and put this guy on its side. And then you don't want it to overlap the edges there. I think it's going to fit pretty well. So I'm just I'm just going to kiss the corners here at this last join and reach in and give that a good burnish. And then we can just put some glue on. It will not meet exactly at the little corners are kind of sticking off down here. That's okay, they're not in the way. If they bother you, you can trim them off. But we'll put one of these pieces on the bottom and one on the top just to make a little stand for our tea lights to go on. And again, if you're not going to have and light up your windows, there's no need for you to make these little light stands. Now the box is set up and ready to use, and before we put it into the acorn house, we want to use it to cut kind of a template for what we need to finish up the top of the house. So here I have a medium weight chipboard circle that is 5.5 inches, and this is going to fit inside of the bottom of the house. And what I want to do is center the box, or you can just measure the size of the box and put it on this piece of chipboard and draw 2 lines that show how big, where the edges of the box come. So, like I said, the other way to do this is, it may be easier to keep it exactly centered, is to do some measuring. Now the box, these pieces were 2 inches wide. I think, with the kind of chipboard I'm using, that makes the box end up being 2¼ inches wide. And of course, the length of these side panels was 5 inches. So the bottom here is 2 1/4 by 5. Since we know the center of our circle, and I'll just mark that up a little darker so that you can see it. And if our box is 2 1/8 inches, 2 1/4 inches wide, if we measure out 1 1/8 from the center of that and keep these lines parallel, that will accomplish what we want to do. So I'll do that here with a pen. And there's one side, and I have a wider ruler that I can use here. And now I have 2 lines so that the width is 2 1/4. The reason we're doing this is that we won't, the two sides on either side of the box, we can use this as a template to draw to make 2 kind of arc-shaped pieces, and these will fit when this comes together here and the box goes in. Up here on the top to finish the top off, we'll use those 2 arc pieces to finish off the top here. So that's why we're using that as a template to cut those. You could just cut a second 5.5 inch circle, draw these lines, and then just cut this off, but I like to conserve chipboard, so I'm just going to use this as a template. And to use this as a template, I'm just going to line up the line with the edge of my chipboard and then trace around this edge. And when I cut this out, I'll make sure to cut inside of this line, and then we'll have the 2 arcs that we need for the top of the box. Here are my 2 arcs, and if you are going to have tea lights inside of the house, you need to cut a little hole that you can put your finger through to remove these to get at the tea lights. You can either use a small hole cutter, and if you've got a die that will cut through chipboard, one of the steel wool dies, and use that to make a hole in the middle. Just cut a little box if you don't have anything like that, just so that you have something big enough that you can get a finger in to pull these out. But again, only if you're going to have the tea lights inside. Now we can dry fit all of our components. Here's the base, or the bottom, which is the 5.5-inch circle. I'll just push that down inside. And then the box slides in. Remember, we line it up centered on the door on either side. And then you can just drop in the little light platforms if you've got them. Eventually we'll glue them in the right place. And then here are my little arcs that I've cut the hole in, the finger hole in. And I find it easiest just to start them on the curved side and fit them in. Obviously the first one is pretty easy to get in, and then on the second one, just take your time, and it goes in there fairly easily too. Now if you're, remember, if you're not having the lights, you wouldn't have the platforms, you wouldn't necessarily have to have these holes here. And also, if you're not having the lights, if you wanted to glue these tops in as well, when we get to final construction, you can do that. So now we've got the interior all laid out, and we will attach that at a later time.